Hello, good afternoon. I spent some lovely time in the sun today. I had some stiffness in my lower back. A couple of days of strenuous exercise over the weekend. Sunday I was feeling it. I decided to take it easy. Did some exercise, didn't stop altogether. But then I was still feeling some stiffness. So today I sat in the sun with my back toward the sun. And the warmth has done me good. So as I'm sitting here now, I'm feeling fairly comfortable. How's everybody doing? Doing all right? Good. That's what I like to hear. Now, this page where I am is in the Threadreader app. I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you're on Twitter, you must know of it already. This was a thread of just 3 tweets of what I thought to be of significance in the coming times. Before I get into reading the couple of articles and the court order it refers to, I think it would be appropriate to mention that the use of the emergency powers in Canada by the administration of Justin Trudeau, which the Prime Minister did in consultation with the opposition. So this was a bipartisan agreement. It's incorrect to blame Justin Trudeau alone. But not only is he not to be blamed, subsequently what the Canadian government is doing is to be commended. Excuse me. I've made a couple of videos about the Freedom Convoy of Canada. So you're invited to refer to those videos to see what my understanding is of the background of this movement. So at length I have gone through consultation with various sources, and as I'm going through the articles and the details, you would be able to listen to what my understanding is, where I'm coming from. So that would give you the necessary context. Coming to these articles. Now, this one was published on February 16, and this one was published on February 18. And then there is this court order, which came out on Thursday, the 17th day of February. So the court order is actually linked from one of the articles. The article that came out on the 17th, I believe. This is the article. So I will be reading whether it was this or rather it was in the article that came out, this one, on the 18th. So rather than speaking of my understanding and giving my opinion, which I might as I go through these articles, but I'd rather let the text in the article give us an understanding. So let's get into the reading of this, and I'll leave the links for these articles in the video description. What it says here: the Ontario Provincial Police and Royal Canadian Mounted Police ordered all regulated financial firms to cease facilitating any transactions from 34 crypto wallets tied to funding trucker-led protests in the country. The federal police agency is working with the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada, FINTRAC, are investigating cryptocurrency donations supporting the weeks-long protest against Canada's vaccine mandate. The protests are now deemed illegal under the Emergencies Act invoked by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for the first time since the law was passed in 1988. So, two things here. Number one, the protest, it says, is against vaccine mandates. And I've mentioned in previous videos on different occasions, not only in relation to this particular subject of the Freedom Convoy, but in other places also, that to have a blanket mandate is not something I support. And in spite of the fact that those who are vaccine hesitant or anti-vaccine when it comes to COVID-19, even if those people are pushing a lot of misinformation coming from dubious doctors and scientists, or those who are announcing themselves as experts in the field of mRNA vaccines or mRNA technology, and there are other kinds of vaccines also. Some information that has come from federal agencies is also not entirely trustworthy. I would have to ask you to excuse me if you hear those sounds coming from the outside. It's just the hour of the day. So, getting back to the subject. However, the use of the Emergencies Act in this case has been not in consideration of what the said protest is for. There are other considerations. But we're only looking at the aspect of the use of crypto wallets and cryptocurrencies. When we look at the court order, you will see the people who are involved. And if you want to investigate who are the people behind this movement or were behind this movement and were exposed, and their manner of protest, you will find there's more than meets the eye. Of course, these people, these truck drivers and the organizers of this protest are not experts on vaccine technology or on medicine, but they picked a subject which gives legitimacy to their protest. And I'm not saying none of the ones protesting were not sincerely advocating against mandates. But you have to understand the underlying reasons for their protest, their hesitancy, and of course the kind of community that this is. And they call themselves the Freedom Convoy, and yet what they did, as I mentioned in the previous video on this subject, is that they hijacked a territory, and not all of them, but collectively, as a community, they became a nuisance by creating a barrier in the trade route between Canada and the USA, causing millions of dollars of losses on a daily basis. So, who are the ones most responsible? The organizers. But the ones who cooperated and became part of the movement are also responsible, as the Canadian police has made clear. Well, let's read more, because we're in the article and we'll get more details here. Let me enlarge the text. The truck drivers began their protest near the end of January against international travel restrictions imposed by the Canadian government, which requires all entrants to the country to be vaccinated against COVID-19. The truckers blocked international bridges and border crossings in several Canadian provinces. The list consists of 29 Bitcoin addresses, one Ethereum address, one Cardano address, one Ethereum Classic address, one Litecoin address, and one Monero address, according to the order. A copy of the order was circulating on Twitter earlier on Wednesday. CoinDesk confirmed its authenticity. Donors have sent more than 20 BTC to the addresses worth over 870,000 US dollars. That's in Canadian dollars 1.1 million. The donors turned to cryptocurrencies after the GoFundMe account that had previously received more than 9 million US dollars was suspended. Now this happened much before. This has happened some time ago, that the GoFundMe account was suspended. They asked for some documentation from what I can recall. So the implications for this and future movements that try to use this avenue of cryptocurrencies. As part of the Emergencies Act, Canada is broadening the scope the country's anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing rules, which will now include crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers such as PayPal and Stripe, will include digital assets such as crypto used by suspected individuals and companies, RCMP spokesperson told CoinDesk in an email statement. And I've read almost the entire article, so there isn't much left for you to read, but of course you will get the link for this article. We'll get some more details in this article. Or what I would do is I'll read this section from the court order, the highlighted portion. This court orders that the Mareva respondents and... Oh, wait a minute. Before I get to this reading, we should understand what a Mareva injunction is. And I thought this article mentions that. Well, actually, if we read the text, we will understand what the Mareva injunction is. Okay, let's read this highlighted portion. This court orders that the Mareva respondents and their servants, employees, agents, assigns, officers, directors, and anyone else acting on their behalf or in conjunction with any of them, and any and all persons with notice of this order are restrained from directly or indirectly by any means whatsoever. A. Selling, removing, dissipating, alienating, transferring, assigning, encumbering, or similarly dealing with the assets of the Mareva respondents listed in Schedule A. Let's look at that. This is the order. These are the names of the plaintiffs, and all of these are the defendants' responding parties. This PDF, if we go to Schedule A, it mentions their names in subheadings. So there's Patrick King, Chamaral Lick, Chris Gara, these three. And they have in detail the cryptocurrency and the wallet address. And you can read the whole thing if you want to. Nothing is hidden. It's revealed in the court document what are the wallet addresses and which are the financial institutions. I'll go back to reading that from B, but you pretty much get an idea that the court document is comprehensive. So in B, it mentions instructing, requesting, counseling, demanding, or encouraging any other person to conduct themselves contrary to paragraph 2A above, and C, facilitating, assisting in, aiding, abetting, or participating in any acts the effect of which is to contrary to paragraph 2A above, until final disposition of this action or further order of this court, the filing said. I want to do one more thing. I want to open my own Twitter account and go in the timeline to where the latest decision, excuse me, is announced by Justin Trudeau on behalf of the government. So this is what the Canadian government has decided. In case you missed it yesterday, our government announced support for businesses in downtown Ottawa that have been impacted by illegal blockades and occupations. For more information on how we'll help them recover as they reopen, click here. Let's do that. And this is from the Government of Canada. And this is a news release that came out February 19, 2022, Ottawa, Ontario. And this is the part. I'll read from here. Today, the Honorable Helena Jaczek, Minister responsible for the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, FedDev Ontario, announced a up to 20 million Canadian dollars investment to provide non-repayable contributions to Ottawa businesses who have suffered losses due to these illegal blockades. Small businesses will be able to apply for non-repayable contributions of up to $10,000 for non-deferrable operational costs not covered by other federal programs. And they have the quotes by different individuals. Helena is there, Mary, Mona Fortier, Member of Parliament, Yassir Naqvi, and the quick facts are mentioned here. And the contacts where interested parties can get in touch. So there is a lot of transparency in how the government is handling it, which is expected. Now, coming back to the court order, the link to which this PDF will be in the video description, and I think sufficient time has been spent. You get a very clear picture, and I'll just have a few comments after reading this. So financial institutions are TD Canada Trust, ATB Financial, aka Alberta Treasury branches, fundraising platforms or websites, GoFundMe, GoFundMe Ireland, GoFundMe Australia, GoFundMe New Zealand, GiveSendGo LLC, Adopt a Trucker, and they have what looks like an email address for the said domain. These are the digital assets. You can go through the list. These are the digital asset platforms: Bull, Bitcoin, Tallycoin, BitBuy, ShakePay, Satoshi Portal, Bills, Binance Smart Chain, PancakeSwap, and Nunchuck. Digital asset cryptocurrency custodians, their names are mentioned. And this is the end of the document, which is 20 pages long. And this is the first page. Excuse me. So this is most definitely a precedent. There is no doubt about that. That any such movement, which, given the background, I have understood this to be a communist movement. Why is it a communist movement? You could ask me. Very briefly, this movement, though it said that's against vaccine mandates, sought to accomplish its goal by obstructing others involved in trade, small businesses and major businesses in Canada and the US. The method they chose. It's communist in its methodology. Why is it communist in its methodology? Because this community has ceased to contribute economically, and rather through tyrannical means they set themselves up as a community in revolution. Is the government doing something unjust? Now that would be the question. Well, these truckers represent a minority. As many as they may be, they represent a minority. Consider a different scenario. If these truckers had been led by a group of people who said that in the stead of what the government is offering, we are giving you an alternative, a superior alternative that we have built by the use of our creativity, our ingenuity, our knowledge. And here is what the government of Canada is doing, and here in comparison is what we are doing. And you are free to avail of better services from us as compared to what the government is giving. Now the government is saying what? Get vaccinated. If you want to go from Canada to the US, get vaccinated. If you're in this trade, if you're a trucker. And safety concerns that were there over a year ago or a year ago have been replied to. And when there is a mandate, the execution of the mandate on an individual level depends on the people on the ground. But let's not forget one thing. These people have stood up against the vaccine mandate for COVID-19. If you look into the medical history of these individuals, are they exemplary? Like, say, someone like Novak Djokovic. Now, he is an exception because he is a top-level athlete. And not only because he is rich, but his profession depends on his good health. Not to say that the health of these people does not matter, but I can assure you, you would be hard-pressed to find even one individual among them who would be as conscientious about his health as a top-level athlete, about diet, about lifestyle, about what they put in their bodies, level of understanding, education. This movement, though it is under the pretext of opposing a vaccine mandate, which can be countered as yes, the government should not be issuing a mandate. That is a different matter. But the level of people that collected together to form this movement and what became of it from the very beginning reeks of communism. Hypothetically, if this movement succeeded and the government gave in to their demands, which was the wish of these people and many who supported them, what would be the outcome? Would you find a better result than what is existing right now? I'm quite convinced that this movement is not over. It will resurface in other places, in other countries, but there would be some common thread that goes through the ideology. Anti-establishment, anti-government sentiment would be very common. Because yes, governments have used means or measures which shows them to be authoritarian. But there was a purpose. And now, in another video, as I've mentioned, several places in Europe are opening up. In Asia, places are opening up. And they're doing that in consideration of where we are in the stream of time and events. But there are people, whether they're inspired by Abrahamic religion, it could be those who follow Judaism or Christianity, actually follow the teachings. And they're anti-government and anti-authority. And they even see in this movement a divine intervention. They believe these truckers to be an expression of the divine will. Yes, there are people like that. And when they see this movement defeated, their faith isn't answered the way they hoped it would be. So when you go on the ground and you look at these things, but look at the contrast. On one hand, you have divine will. You think you're in line with the divine will. And then the practical reality on the ground is using these crypto wallets, cryptocurrencies, so that the government cannot trace where the money comes from and where it goes and who is holding how much. How do people reconcile these actions? They're using the cutting edge of technology, blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and yet at the same time they're reading into it the will of God. But then you also have to look at that, suppose they're able to do that. They think Ethereum, Cardano, Ethereum Classic, Litecoin, Monero, etc. are provided by God to these people for the fulfillment of His will. And what is God accomplishing? Something inferior to what the government can do? Then what has more power? What has better means and knowledge? Questions that are getting answered right now. But all of this came about because a point had come. I personally saw people who in the last couple of years, their knowledge about just the science related to COVID-19 has grown by zero. Literally zero. They are at the same point where they were around the end of 2019 in their understanding. And especially since the mandates came out, they're pretty much at the same point, and they repeat the same statements that they were making in 2020. And now it's 2022 and they're at the same point. Their only wish is for a movement like this and other movements like this to overthrow the government, to be seditious, and disregarding the millions of people who are benefiting from the actions of the government. The government is not perfect. There is no perfect government. But there are people who believe that the absence of government will bring about a better society. I would urge you to look into the lives of these people as the evidence. Look into the individual lives of these people where they crave an absence of authority, because government to them is synonymous with authority. So look into the lives of these people, those who are so busy on social networks, and see what their belief yields. I would end this by saying there are some perfect things in this universe. Yes, perfect. Perfect because they work as they're designed to. Human beings and their actions are not in that realm. Human beings do not act or think perfectly. Human beings do not have foresight so as to clearly anticipate the result of their actions. Some human beings are more insightful than others, and they educate their insight through acquired knowledge, which is the method of science, but a lot of it is trial and error. But I am not in support of this movement. I'm in support of those who can improve upon what exists and give the evidence of that improvement. That is what I support. I don't want freedom to be won by these people, whatever said freedom they claim to win, when right now their failure is evident. They failed on day one, and they continued to fail day after day after that. It's good that they failed. It's good that the government has succeeded in doing what it has and setting a good precedent. There could be overreach of government power, definitely. There's no doubt about that. But there are people who invite that kind of use of power, and they don't have better ways than they have used so far. That's all I would say now. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention, and goodbye.